says life is like a box of chocolates. But don't tell Nick that. He's on a diet. It's late night with the Sit and Spin. And here's the diet, Nick O'Kelly.
I can't even bring in the show because these bumpers are so hilarious. Welcome to the Weekend Sit and Spin. Sit and Spin radio show. I am Nick O'Kelly coming to you live here from a permanent location. Can I say I'm super excited to finally be able to welcome you, the audience, the longtime listeners, I know you're out there, to the new and improved permanent location of the Sit and Spin radio show. It is at Studio 2, the AOK production house. Finally, back in America. I've been the last 2 years in Europe. And I tell you what, that was quite the experience. And if you were listening to the show while we were doing it in Europe, then you've already heard a lot of what I had to say about it. But let freedom ring. I think that's the only thing I can say now. I'm just glad to be back, glad to be home, glad to be in a new job, new year. It's the same show though. The show goes on. You know that's the old saying that the show goes on. Well, in this case, the show, for me at least, literally does go on because through all of my changes in life and the moves that I've made, and I mean, this show has been, I've been doing it for the better part of 8 years, and we've been in, 6 different locations, literally. Some of those in different cities, some of those in different states, some of those in different countries. It's quite amazing. But the show is continuing here today on this lovely Saturday morning. You can call it and be a part of it. I'd love to talk to some people. I noticed yesterday, I went to my Spreaker account. It's actually been a while since I've been on my Spreaker website, just because, we've been moving. We came back home. We were with family for a little while. We were in Disney World for a little while. And then we were staying on a condo on Folly Beach for a little while because when we got back, we didn't have anywhere to live. My wife owned a house in North Carolina before we moved to Europe. We sold that because we got married and then moved to Europe. I mean, our first house together was over in Germany. And so she sold her house before we left in North Carolina, and now that we're back home, she's living here with me in Charleston, South Carolina, and I had been renting before I went to Germany. It really is a renter's market out there. I was shocked when we got back to the United States and we're starting to look for somewhere to live. We ended up in a temporary living condo. Well, temporary living condo. I don't know what that means. We rented a condo. It was on the beach. It was a vacation home, one of these that someone owns and it's their vacation home, but they rent it out. Well, during the winter, and by the way, some fantastic deals. So if you ever want to go down to Folly Beach and you want to be able to live there or stay there for a short while, some fantastic deals down there on vacation homes during the winter. So between the months of, I guess it was December and April, we were going to stay there as long as through the end of this month. We were very lucky that we were able to find a house, buy a house. I mean, we closed on this house that we bought within like 2 weeks. And so we've built the home studio and the production house here inside of it. So that's very, very nice. And what a nice place it is. But literally closed on this thing in 2 weeks. I've heard horror stories. My parents like to flip houses. And so I've heard a lot of horror stories about trying to buy homes. Not that all of their houses have been horror stories, but buying homes, closing on homes. My brother and sister-in-law wanted to get a house and had a whole issue with the owner wouldn't fix something after the inspection and ended up not being able to get the house that they kind of wanted there for a while. And I mean, I've heard it all, but this was a fantastic situation. It was very smooth for us. We had a really great real estate agent who also has set us up with several different contractors now that we've used, and so on. So I just have to say that I feel very blessed. And like I said, let freedom ring, because you really get a new appreciation for what freedom means when you go live somewhere besides the United States. It's a little frustrating to look at the news and see all the liberals complaining about, they're complaining about the political landscape, especially with someone like Trump in office. And, I mean, we're really starting to see, and maybe you disagree with me. I didn't give out the number. It's in the chat box, but 843-212-1295. That's the number to call here to get onto the show, 843-212-1295. And thanks for joining us. But we're really starting to find out what exactly it means to have Donald Trump in the office, right? I mean, I think for a lot of people, whenever it was back time for the election and everything was Trump this, Hillary that, they're fighting on television, all the debates were just nothing more than a circus. And I think everybody was saying to themselves, what exactly would a Donald Trump president look like? Because all we knew, I mean, I love Donald Trump. He's talked about running many times in the past. He's been very politically outspoken for many years. So growing up with that in the media, I knew where he stood. I mean, I knew that he was kind of an independent conservative, but living in New York, so you had that kind of liberal agenda kind of underlying a lot of its tones, but nevertheless, always an independent force, and was very much against the Iraq War, spoke out publicly about that and so forth. So I followed him, and I you can ask, I mean, I go throughout the duration of this show, I've talked about I'd love to see Donald Trump in office, and it's very cool to be able to now come, fast forward to where we are now and realize, oh, well, he's finally there. But people were going off of what they knew of him as a reality television star. Of course, he's one of the most successful reality television stars. Did you know that? I mean, I'm wondering if you really understood that his show was probably the most successful outside of, what's that guy's name, the motorcycle guy? I can't think of it. Monster Garage and all of that. Those two are the highest paid, most, viewers, highest rated reality television stars. And that's saying something. I mean, I know you're probably sitting there saying to yourself, who cares, right? Well, yeah, I mean, think about it, because there is a lot of reality TV. Think about how many different shows there are. And some of them have gone on for quite some time. I mean, did you know Survivor was still on television? It's like 18 seasons now or something. And I watched part of the last one. And I mean, I was sucked in right away. I mean, I used to love Survivor. I remember when it came on, I watched the first, 5 or 6 seasons probably. It was like a family night thing, Yeah, some people have game night. We had Survivor night. We all went over to my aunt's house, and she would cook dinner, and we had the bandanas, and we'd sit there and eat dinner together. And it was like Wednesday nights, so we'd all go to church together. And then I think she would actually record it so that we could rewind it or whatever we did. I don't even know if DVR was out back then, but somehow we had it set up to where we could watch it from the beginning, because I think we would get there a few minutes late. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Actually, I think she recorded it on a VCR. This is the very first year of this. Okay, recorded it on a VCR, and we would get out of church, go to her house. She would make us dinner, or we'd get pizza or whatever it was. We'd eat dinner together and kind of hang out and chat and talk, and catch up, because this is how we saw each other. How crazy of a world this is. I mean, you go look at visualizations of the 1950s, and you have families, sitting around the radio and talking together, and now we sit around the dinner table and chat before we go watch Survivor. What a world. And think about how much it's changed now, because we literally recorded this thing on a VCR. So anyway, we would chat around, catch up. This is how we saw each other every week. And then we would go and watch the tape of Survivor commercial free, and then you'd have the episodes that were like 2 hours long, the last episodes and so forth. So we would tape the first hour, we would eat, and then give ourselves 35, 40 minutes so we could watch that first hour on tape and then catch up to the second hour, and then we'd have to watch that one with commercials. Very funny how we used to avoid commercials. They've built that in now. They really got smart. If you ever watch YouTube, you can actually catch this show on YouTube. I don't think I have commercials enabled on there. I'm not monetized on YouTube. I'm sure YouTube would demonetize me, which has been a whole fiasco, by the way, for the last 2 weeks. Different radio show hosts and conservative podcasts and video bloggers and so forth getting banned on YouTube, which that's a brand new world. I mean, you want to talk about living in a brand new world, getting pushed into a digital gulag by YouTube, who says you're a conservative, we're going to shut you down and demonetize you. You remember the guy, what Pootie Poo or whatever his name was? I don't know. It sounds stupid, but I think that's really his name. Anyway, they demonetized this guy because he was talking. He was saying something. He's gotten older, like PewDiePie. That was it. PewDiePie, whatever it is. I don't. Whatever the guy's name is. They made fun of him on South Park. Well, for a long time, he was like a video gamer or whatever, and that's what he did on YouTube, but he was pretty young then, I think. Well, he's gotten older now. It's like, think about how many years ago that was. It's crazy. PewDiePie, that's the name. Well, anyway, as he's gotten older, as anyone does, got into politics and reading the news and actually being a part of society and so forth, and he said a few things that were political, and I think now he's been demonetized by YouTube. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic. So that's the landscape that we're living in. So I'm sorry, I'm going off on tangents. I'm so excited. I haven't been in the studio in so long, and now I'm actually in a comfortable chair here at my desk. I've got a really nice writing desk that my father gave me. He's in furniture, so it's a wicker rattan writing desk that I've had for quite some time. And this has always been my studio desk since I started doing the radio show privately. Now, I used to do it with some people at Kinetic Hi-Fi, Drew Howard and Bucky Barnes and Ace and the whole team there. I really miss doing that. So I've kind of caught up with Derek Daisy and Drew Howard. We've talked about maybe doing some shows together once again. And by the way, we're planning to, and I don't want to get too excited because anything could happen. But it's planned. It's set up. I talked to him last night. We're going to have Derek Daisy over here at the AOK Production House for To The Echo radio show. Now, we haven't done that in quite some time. I could go back on my Spreaker account and really look up how long it's been. But that's very exciting to get all that going. And now I have it set up here in the studio. For a long time, my private studio was really just a one-person gig, and I didn't even have very good equipment. This is the best that it's been. I have professional equipment now installed. I did the upgrade to the writing desk yesterday so that I could install the arm to it. So now I've actually literally got a full-on radio desk set up here. For the longest time, when I first started, and you go watch the YouTube videos when I did this on a video, my own reality television, I had a boom microphone stand with a non-broadcasting microphone kind of right in front of my face, and it was terrible because I'm trying to operate the show, I'm trying to produce the show and everything, and switch between cameras and everything. This is before we had any kind of staff, and I've got this microphone, and one of my main cameras was like face on, and so I had this stand like over my shoulder, coming up, and then the microphone is in a little cradle, so I had the cradle, turned so that it was directly in front of my face, but it had to sit behind me because otherwise, in order for it to be beside, I had a very long desk at the time, and in order for the microphone to be in the right position in front of my face, if I put the stand beside of the desk, the boom arm would have to be fully extended. And so the microphone was too heavy, so it would constantly fall through. I mean, I tightened that thing down, just making sure that it wouldn't go anywhere. And while I'm filming this, the microphone is falling in front of my face. So I finally had to put it behind me, and it's coming over the shoulder. It was terrible. So forgive me if I go off on tangents, but I think that's why you listen to the show, I mean, you don't. If you want me just to throw out the buzzwords, I can do it. Trump, Kim Jong-un. By the way, they've reached an unprecedented, well, I don't want to say a deal, okay? I saw the headline on Drudge Report the other day, Trump does it again. Well, he hasn't really done anything yet, although I had full faith, okay? And this is kind of playing right back into where we were with the reality stuff. I had full faith in the Donald. I knew that he would get in there and start making some deals. I mean, he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal, right? So we knew he's a deal maker. He's a real estate mogul. I mean, that's what he is. That's what he does. His entire reality show scope was about making deals, was about being a business person. And that's what we've been saying on this show specifically for quite some time, that we really needed a businessman, someone outside of the political realm to run the country, at least for a little while, because we got so caught up. And when the word is swamp, okay? You want to know the buzzword there? Swamp. And I even saw a headline about Jared Kushner quietly tackling Washington's swamp. This is on CNN. Unbelievable. Kushner continues to make government accountable to the people, including...
We interrupt your video to bring you a Geico message.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Geico. I'm not sponsored by Geico, so that's just that's opening up a thing here. Kushner continues to make government accountable to the people. He has retaliated with a Kushner takedown effort, hiding on or downplaying his accomplishments while engaging in character assassination. I don't know what's going on with Jared Kushner. I don't really care, but evidently, he's also waging war against this swamp. And when you talk about the swamp, what is it? A lot of people, I don't think, understand exactly what that means. I mean, you have Washington just full of politicians, and these guys are lawyers. I mean, let's break down who politicians on an average basis really are. You don't have a lot of business guys. You don't have a lot of producers. I mean, go read Ayn Rand. That's really a visualization of the Washington swamp feeding off of the American producers, okay? I mean, these guys they don't make anything. They don't do anything. They take other people's money and they represent them, quote unquote. I mean, literally, that's what a lawyer does, right? I mean, what do they do, really? They do some research. They go say some nice words in front of a judge. They got a lot of lingo going on there. They know all about how to get through loopholes. And maybe that's why they end up becoming politicians, because the political landscape kind of requires that. But that's what we need to get away from, because that's not what it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to have career politicians running the country. You're supposed to have American people going and representing the population for a short period of time and then going back to work. And if you had people who didn't need the money, or maybe they do want the money, but didn't necessarily want to be in Washington for a long time, they just had a belief system. They had things that they wanted to accomplish in Washington, but they're business people, and they have a vested interest in getting it done and then going back home, then I don't think we would have a swamp. And that was really what it was designed to be. It was designed to be a group of people who say to themselves, okay, we want to get these laws passed. We want to, get the taxes cut, or we want to, build the border wall, or whatever it was. Then they could go to Washington, putting their own business ventures, whatever it is, back home on pause while they go to Washington to accomplish an agenda and then come back home so they can keep making money. Well, what's changed is that you have lawyers who simply aren't getting enough money from their communities because they've already put everybody in jail, or maybe you just don't have that many crime or that much crime where they're from. I mean, look at Lindsey Graham. I mean, overall, I feel like here in South Carolina, we have crime. Okay, don't get me wrong, but what was Lindsey Graham fighting against as a lawyer here? And so they get up there in Washington. They say to themselves, we're not making enough money off our own communities, so we're going to go to Washington. We're going to stay there. We're going to figure out the loopholes to be able to keep us here and keep lying to our people so they'll keep voting us in, or we'll use illegal aliens and dead people to get us voted in over and over and over again. I mean, look at drooling Nancy Pelosi now. Is anybody going to tell this woman to take a pill and go home? I mean, she literally can't function anymore. And I don't know if it's just because she's drugged up out of her mind, or if she's just got Alzheimer's. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this lady, but one thing is for sure, she is not in the right state of mind to be making legal and lawful decisions. She is not in the right state of mind to be representing her people. I mean, she keeps saying that Bush is in office. She keeps having these brain freeze. She's on television drooling. I mean, this lady, enough is enough. I mean, and the weird thing about it is she really doesn't need the money, okay? So what is she doing there? What exactly does it do for her to be there? Is it a power trip? It must be, because this is one of the maybe the richest person in Congress. I don't know that for sure, but I think she's the richest person in Congress. I mean, you want to talk about a swamp and people, gaming the system to make money. This is your perfect example. Someone who went to Washington, made billions of dollars, and remains there, continuing to feed off of the American producers. Well, I knew all along that Donald Trump was not going to do that because the man is a billionaire. He does not need money. He does not need to make money off of American taxpayers. He already makes money off of American taxpayers, but not through their taxes, okay? He makes money off of their actual, in fact, it's their vacation money, so it's really it's really individual slush funds that he makes money off of. He has a vested interest in making sure that the economy remains strong because otherwise people aren't going to be buying real estate. They're not going to be staying in Trump Towers, because they're not going to be able to go on vacation. If the economy's bad, businesses go down. Trump Tower, think about the hotels that he's built. I mean, they're convention centers, they're beautiful hotels. The only people going there are people whose businesses are either their businesses are doing well or business is good enough that they have plenty of money and so they can go on vacation. I mean, this is what Trump makes money off of. He does not need to go into Washington and make more money off of your taxes. So he has a vested interest in an agenda, which was securing the borders, getting the rule of law strengthened once again in America, pumping up the economy, getting jobs going, America first, bringing industry back to America, because these are the things that he's going to profit off of in the private sector. And then, of course, also, securing our relations with other countries, but mainly for national security reasons. I mean, his whole thing was America first, not globalism. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. And it was a beautiful credo. I cried when I heard this. He's up there giving this campaign speech, and he says that, and now it's like my mantra, Americanism, not globalism. And I remember a few years ago making comments on social media and so forth about globalism and globalists and this sort of thing, and people saying, "What does that mean? What do you mean by I don't?" And someone actually said to me, "I don't know what you mean by globalist." And I wanted to smack him. I want to be like, "What do you mean?" It means one world government. It means China getting up in front of the UN and saying that they would take on the task of bringing in a one world government. It's exactly what the EU was originally founded to be. To take away the sovereignty of individual countries, conglomerate it in an unelected government, bureaucracy, and then tell those people how to live their lives while they take their money. I mean, that's what's going on in EU. And let me tell you something. I lived there, and Germany, while they may... I mean, it's so strange because they are a free people, okay? But really, it's more or less socialist. I mean, these guys are paying 50% taxes and up. I mean, we talk about high taxes in America. They're paying some high taxes there. I mean, they really don't get to have their income, and because of that, for us to live there, it was really an interesting situation because we were gifted by being able to pay reduced prices, I guess, for everything. I mean, we didn't use the cable there because obviously it was all in German, but we did have cable, and it cost $18 a month. $18. Now, this is no joke. I've got cable and internet here at the house right now. Of course, we've got one of these bundles. I'm probably, after this first year is up, I have to be honest, I'm probably gonna drop it. Although I do like having cable. I mean, I do. Because even though I can get the channels with my antenna, here in the office, I have just a digital antenna and my PlayStation hooked up to a television. So, through the PlayStation, I can get Netflix, and then the digital antenna, not that I spend much time in here watching TV, but if I want to, I can, and it's all pretty much available to me. The antenna gets, all your network channels and a few other things as well. So there's plenty on there. But it doesn't have things like, and I feel so stupid even saying this because it's not like I spend all my time watching TV, but, you know, we all have our guilty pleasures. It doesn't get, you know, Food Network, HBO, Showtime, HGTV. I mean, some of these channels, if I'm watching TV, that's probably the majority of what is on is something either from Food Network or HGTV or potentially Fox News. I do watch some of that. I don't like to very much anymore. There's very few shows that I follow. In Germany, we followed Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity quite a bit because on YouTube, you could watch their full shows. Of course, that's not available on their television over there. CNN is the only, by the way, CNN is the only American news channel available in Germany, basically. I mean, I guess if we wanted, we probably could get satellite, maybe. I don't know. I mean, where we were living, we could not have satellite because it was just a rule of the house that we were there that you couldn't have a satellite installed. I mean, we literally lived in a house. It was a 4-story, actually 5-story house with four levels of apartments. And the bottom level and the top, and these were pretty large. I mean, it was basically the largest house we could get. And that's another thing. I mean, when I say they're not free, I don't think they really understand the freedom that we enjoy here in America. And I think that as Americans, we don't really understand the freedom that we enjoy because we don't get the opportunity. And not that I'm saying you should have it, but I think it was good for me. It would be good for anybody to experience it, but we don't get the opportunity to go over there and see what they deal with. I mean, we have all this space here. We can expand. We have these giant houses that we can live in. You can't really, I mean, there are some, don't get me wrong, there are some large houses over there, as large as any we have here, but they're very, very expensive. It was the upper echelon that lived there, and a big part of their society is based around mass transit, and that has a lot to do with the price of gas. Well, if you live in one of these larger houses, you're more than likely, I mean, because, you know, each city has an area with pretty large houses in it, but they're very expensive. So I would say the average person most likely cannot afford to live there unless it's just in very bad repair and they get very lucky with buying it. But a lot of those houses are family owned and, you know, passed down through the families. So the average person is not living in those real large houses in the city. So most likely you're out in the country somewhere, and the countries, you know, really aren't, they're not what we know as the country. They're just kind of in between cities. So access to public transit in those areas is limited. It's sparse. You can do it. You can still get there. There is a train that's going to come by your house, but you're probably walking to it or riding a bike to it. It's probably a couple of miles away, maybe further. In some cases, much further. I remember I went to visit a friend of mine that I was working with on one weekend. I had a very nice time with his family. He invited me into his home, cooked dinner, had a nice cookout there in his backyard. And we went to a street festival in his little town. And it's funny the way that their towns are set up. They really have villages in some areas of Germany. And he lived in, I would call it a village because, I mean, there was a very small center of the city downtown area, but it was very, very small. I would say much smaller than anything that we know as a small town. So I can't really call it a town because any town that we know of in America here would be larger than this. But anyway, it was a village, let's call it that. And there was a little street festival going on, farmer's market kind of thing. And we went there, had a really nice time, went back to his house, had the cookout. But I did not have a car. So I had to take the train to get to his house, and this was a very long train ride. I mean, it took me about an hour to ride out there. Let's get a little sip of coffee there. From where at that point, I had not moved to Germany yet. I was there for a month, getting used to everything, learning the lay of the town, finding out about the job that I was going to be doing, and so on. And so this was on a weekend. And so I was in a hotel in the center of the city, And so I walked from the hotel to the train was 1 block. In the city, the trains are literally everywhere. If there's not a train that's coming by your place of residency, like literally on the street in front of you, it's maybe 1 block over. And this hotel was in between 2 trains, 2 train lines. And so I could go to the right when I walked out of the hotel, 1 block, and when I say a block, I mean on the corner. You walk to the corner and there is the train, or you could turn to the left and go to the corner and there would be the train there. So I walked 1 block over, took a city train, to the main train station, which was, 3 stops, I guess. I think it was 3 stops. Got on a inner city train. It was a larger train, but it was a very slow train to get to his house. I mean, they have the bullet trains there that literally go 220, 230 miles an hour, 300 kilometers. So it's like being in a NASCAR. It's like being in a stock car on a NASCAR race in this train. When we went to Munich one time, that was the fastest. That line was the fastest one we rode. Because it depends on where you're going. It depends on how straight the train tracks get. And I guess the quality of the tracks in between certain cities. So some places that you take a train to don't go that fast, but they still go 100 miles an hour, But to get up to 220, 230, there's only a few places in the country that have the long stretches of straight tracks that will allow that speed. So when we went to Munich, we got to do that. So anyway, did that quite a few times, but going to this guy's house, there was no bullet train. It was just a commuter train, really, and so it was quite slow. And it was literally probably, to get to the train station was 10 minutes, and then from there it was another 50. I don't know if it was a full hour, but pretty close to an hour, just riding to his house. Now by car, now this is how and this guy worked the same place I did, and where I was working from the hotel was about 10 minutes. So you ride the train out there and you're thinking, God, this guy's driving an hour every single day. And while some of them did, by car, it wasn't that bad. It was maybe a 20, 30-minute ride, which is pretty much what I do here on a daily basis. But I can't imagine doing it there because the price of gas was ridiculously expensive. Double. It was $8 a gallon. If you're going to convert it to dollars, $8 or $9 a gallon. Think about that. So there's not a lot of driving going on over there. It's very, very heavily relies on mass transit. Now, that's not what makes it socialist. But these people, they're paying so much taxes that they really can't afford to live, I would say, off of a normal salary. And therefore, the government has to subsidize everything. Everything. So that's why when I say we were paying cable prices at $18, when we first got over there, I was thinking, wow, this is incredible. How are they, how can they have $18 cable prices? You want to fly somewhere, a 3-hour flight here. It's not a 3-hour flight. It would be an hour. It was an hour flight. So if I wanted to fly from Charleston to Orlando or Charleston to Atlanta or Charleston to Raleigh, New York City, I think, is from here is about 2 hours, but that length of a flight here in America, 1 to 2 hour range is what, $300, $400 maybe more. Of course, you can find the deals, so don't call me and tell me I'm stupid. But you can find the deals that will allow you a cheaper flight sometimes. If you hit it just right, you might find a $150 flight. But there are very few options that are under $100. Can we agree on that? There are some budget airlines like Frontier now that will do certain flights for, $80 maybe or something. But for the most part, to get where you actually need to go, unless you happen to be going from Charleston to Chicago, I think that's the one that Frontier has out of here that's $80 is to Chicago. But that was like an introductory price when they first brought the airline here. Now I think they've gone back up. But you're not going to get under $150, $200 very often. Most of the time, you're probably going to pay $300 for a flight. Well, over there, the same length of flight between the city I was in, Dusseldorf, and Paris, for example, was about the same flying distance as from here to Orlando or a little bit further than I guess than Atlanta, but about an hour flight, $50. $50. Now, you also can pay higher prices if, like, you want to fly the next day or something, because their flights fill up. They do it, like I said, there's a lot of mass transit, so there's a lot of people flying. Here, and you really got to think about that, because here we do a lot of driving. When we want to go down to Disney World, we drive. It's a 6-hour drive, but hey, I mean, gas is $2 a gallon, so we'll just drive. I mean, it's much more convenient and less frustrating than dealing with the airport, where I have to, strip down and get a rectal exam, and so we're just going to drive. But over there, that's really not an option unless you're just unless you're a rich person. Of course, you have the Autobahn in Germany, so you can, there's no speed limits in certain areas. And by the way, I think that's a myth that I want to debunk. It's not like there's just no speed limits anywhere. That's not true. Okay, in between cities on the Autobahn, in between cities, so in the country, there are areas of the interstate also normally where it's straight for a certain amount of time or whatever. If there's a lot of curves and stuff, they have a speed limit. In the cities, there are speed limits. Around the cities on the Autobahn, there are speed limits. So it's only in between cities where there is no speed limit. But there is also a very, very intense inspection process that is required by the government. Something else that you have to pay for. It's subsidized, but you still have to pay for it. So your car, you don't see very many old cars there. You'll see some that have been restored. They're in excellent condition. But you don't see a lot of old cars. You don't see... Most of the cars that they have on the road there, we would consider high-end. And that's also a very interesting thing. I know I'm just going off on all these different tangents. I'll bring it back pretty soon. But that's also a big thing that for us, a Mercedes, a BMW, even Volkswagens are expensive vehicles. Well, it's because they're imported. Over there, it's no different than Ford and Chrysler. And again, their prices are subsidized. So you have a lot of Americans going over there, buying cars, and then shipping them back because you can get it so much cheaper there. They'll have like a European bank account or maybe a vacation home there or whatever. So they'll fly over, they'll buy a car, and that's exactly what the Germans do. They come over here, they buy Fords and Chryslers, and maybe not Chrysler, but Fords, and ship them back home because it's so much cheaper to buy it here than it is over there. But anyway, that's beside the point. But you don't see a lot of old cars. I mean, if you're going to be getting your car up 200 miles an hour, okay, there has to be some kind of assurance that there's not going to be a muffler flying off the back of it or something like that. Could you imagine if we had 200 miles an hour on our interstate? I mean, here in South Carolina, there's no inspections. You don't inspect your car. And so you see the craziest things driving down the road. I mean, literally, cars without a front end. And people say, oh, you see that? No. I literally mean there's cars driving around where when it's coming up to you, all you see is an engine. There's just an engine sitting there. There's no front end. That would not be allowed, okay, in a state that has an inspection law. I mean, unless they're breaking the law, they wouldn't be driving that around. It's really not safe. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we don't have an interstate system with unlimited mile. People always want to go faster and faster, but you have to think about it. I mean, if some of the cars that are driving around here, I would not want them going above 80 miles an hour down the interstate in front of me. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. Anyway, back to the socialism of the European Union. The German people, while they are a free society, okay, they're really not, because there is no First Amendment that allows them to say whatever they want. There are instances that they could be arrested for their speech, okay, and that is not free speech. There is no freedom of religion there. You pay to be a part of a church in Germany. Can you imagine that? You are taxed if you're a part of the Catholic Church, and that's your options, by the way. You are either Catholic or you're Protestant. There's no Baptist, there's no Lutheran and Protestant. There is Protestant, but I'm sorry, not Protestant, Presbyterian. There's none of that going on. Orthodox and all this. I mean, think about how many churches we have here. And they always call this area of the South the Bible Belt because there's so many churches. But not just that there's that many churches. There's a very large variety as well of churches. You could go be a part of basically any type of congregation that you wanted to. I mean, we even have the Church of the Jedi or whatever it is here. I mean, there's a Star Wars church in America. You know what I mean? So any kind of, worship that you want to take part in America, you're both empowered to do that and you're allowed to do that. Now we have the media kind of sneaking up on us a little bit and starting to push that religion is going away, that it's no longer trendy. You have a lot of religious persecution going on. And I don't really want to get into that conversation right now, but it is relatively relevant right now because we have this movie, Wrinkle in Time. I'm not going to go watch this movie. I hated the original one. I don't like the book. We had to read this book in school, and I don't understand why this book is taught to kids. I mean, it's literally taught, okay? This is a terrible book. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it right now. I hate this book. I think it's the dumbest story. I don't think it makes any sense at all. And there are so many other really good novels. I mean, I'd rather see that age of student reading Harry Potter, okay, than Wrinkle in Time. In my opinion, Harry Potter is really a part of literature right now. I know people are going to get mad about that. But seriously, it's an excellent story. It's a really well-written book. And the whole series is fantastic, and you can really grow up with it, but that's beside the point. Wrinkle in Time sucks. I mean, it's terrible. And so the original movie is really, I mean, it's bad. I mean, come on, guys. I know people are out there, diehard fans. It's got some kind of cult following, but what are you thinking? I mean, what? I'd love somebody to tell me exactly why it is that they like A Wrinkle in Time so much. What is it about Wrinkle in Time that gets you going? Okay, maybe in the comments here in the podcast comments, if you go download it, if you go play it, I have a whole comment section that you can leave me a comment and tell me, defend for me Wrinkle in Time and why it is that Disney felt the need to remake this terrible movie. And now with Oprah, I mean, if I didn't want to see it any less, Oprah certainly is not the reason that I want to go watch this. But anyway, evidently it really ditches the book's explicit Christian references. And I've got an article here from The Insider saying the movie actually suffers because of it. Though the film adaptation has several critical flaws, namely pacing and an off-kilter wobble between too much exposition and then not enough, the removal of L. Ingalls' religious overtones leads to a key issue. By removing the religious themes, the movie version of A Wrinkle in Time loses part of its narrative arc. This leads to a confusing storyline and muddled message when it comes to the antagonist and the purpose of the celestial characters of Miss Who, Miss Whatsit, and Miss Witch. So, if you're a fan of the story, then you know what they're talking about there. But evidently, and that is absolutely on purpose. That the media and unfortunately Disney as well are trying to push society away from Christianity, away from religion and worship. And that's a core value in my opinion of America, of the founding of this country. It was founded on God, and the forefathers believed in God. And even if maybe they didn't worship Him, they certainly believed Him and in Him and feared Him. And that's a core value of our culture here. And so it's a shame. And of course, the Bible teaches that this is going to happen, and closer to the end times. But it's a shame to be watching it in my lifetime that the media seems to have an agenda to push us away from Christianity, and they're up there at the Oscars and things saying that it's just you're no longer allowed to be religious, and it's so. Nevertheless, we still have religious freedom in this country. It is protected by the Constitution. They don't have that and Europe. And so there are all of these kind of socialist overtones happening in a country like that. But now on top of that, you have an unelected bureaucracy that is ruling their way of life over in Brussels. And, they didn't elect them. They don't have a say in that government, but yet it is implementing laws into their society. And their election process there is wild. I mean, it's just wildly different from what we have here. There are many more parties, but when they elect a chancellor, there's a chancellor and then there's a president, and the chancellor really makes the decisions. The president's some kind of a figurehead. I don't understand how they interact. Angela Merkel, the chancellor. But once they elect that person, because right now it's a woman, that person has to get some kind of an agreement between, I think, 3 of the parties. So at least all of these parties exist, but I guess there's maybe 3 large ones, or there's several large ones, but out of the large ones that exist, you have to have an agreement between the 3 of them after the chancellor's been elected and put in place. I mean, she could actually be removed shortly after her election if she doesn't reach this agreement. It's wildly different. But anyway, they go through this whole election process. But yet the chancellor has to kowtow now to the bureaucracy in Brussels. And so that's why you see this mass influx of immigration, because now I think Angela Merkel at first was up there talking about how we welcome our Muslim friends and blah, 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 and, all these immigrants and bring them all in. Well, her party, and this was, I'm shocked that she was reelected. We were there during that election process. So we got to see the whole thing happen. And I spoke to a lot of my colleagues who really they were upset about this whole thing. They were like, we're not really sure about her anymore because we're seeing the effects. And let me tell you, it's not their country anymore. I mean, you feel like you're walking through the Middle East over there. I know, and not necessarily proud to say I was a part of a lot of the jokes that went around as I was growing up about, especially in the South, about how there was a lot of Hispanics living here, and we knew that a lot of them were illegal. We're here illegally. And of course, maybe the kids, and that's why Donald Trump is saying that if they were brought in as kids, and this is not a change on his position, by the way. His position that the Dreamers or whatever, I mean, he has said since the beginning that if they were brought in as kids and they're hardworking and they've adopted the culture and everything, then he will give them a path to citizenship. And so he did. And it's a multi-year path, by the way. It's not just immediate citizenship, which is what we would have had under Hillary Clinton. So I was much in favor of what he did, because I think if you want to come into this country, there's a process to do it. So the path that he laid out to citizenship, I mean, basically follows what we already had. So I was very proud of that. But he's also, there's a lot of deportations going on as well of the criminals, a lot of roundups going on of people who have committed crimes that are in jails, they're getting deported. That's all happening behind the scenes. Well, anyway, Angela Merkel was welcoming all these people in at first, but when her party got so upset about it and started saying, "We're not going to reelect you because you're damaging our culture," and so she is. It's literally like walking around in the Middle East in all of Europe. Germany was, some areas were worse. Where we were, it wasn't as bad. It was pretty bad, though. I mean, I'm not saying that they're all bad people. I know a lot of them aren't, but lots of hoods on heads, okay? Lots of burqas, lots of that on the streets. And it's really a shame because, in my opinion, that is absolutely a symbol of slavery. I mean, that means that woman is a slave to her husband. And so it's, to me, to see that, and I hate how the media is trying to portray it as something that's cool, as something that's trendy. There are actually commercials. Nike made one of these, and there are commercials on television over there of Nike showing the women wearing it and saying, just do it with the burqa or whatever. I don't know all the different names, but the head covering. And it makes you sick. You're like, oh God, I mean, really, it's really a push to sell it to you. Like a used car salesman trying to give you something with sawdust in the engine. That's how I feel when I see this on television. And I say to myself, what are these people thinking? And I guess it's mostly the younger people who just don't understand the culture that comes behind that head covering. I mean, it's one thing to wear a scarf over your head because you think it's cool or warm or whatever. It's another thing to wear this specific piece of clothing that is a symbol of slavery. And whenever women are generally, whenever they escape Syria, wherever it is, where they've been forced to wear this, you see them burning it when they get away from that lifestyle. There are burnings that happen of these burqas and so forth, but there are all over the streets in all of Europe, and it's worse in larger cities like Berlin, like Paris, especially the further south you go, in Italy and so forth. It's really like being in a different place. Now, I had never been in Europe before this mass migration, so I guess I can't 100% say that it's different than it was before, but I have to assume that it didn't look like that 10 years ago. Now, the further north you go, we did notice a trend that Northern Europe doesn't seem to be as much of this happening. It doesn't seem to be as many head coverings and things like that. And I think it's just the distance between where they're coming from. But definitely the further south you go, it's legitimately like all of a sudden you're in the Middle East. And I'm talking to my wife and saying, are we still in Europe? Did we get off at the wrong airport? I mean, this is very, very strange and not something we want to see in this country because our culture simply does not, we are a free people. We don't want to make our women slaves, no matter what the liberals want to tell you, okay? They can say all day long that they are oppressed, but the society that we live in now is radically different from what it was when there was actual oppression of anyone in this country. And certainly it's radically different from the real oppression that's happening over in the Middle East and now in Europe because they've allowed this flood of migrants. And like I said, over there, those migrants are not illegal. It's very different from what we have here. They were welcomed, mostly by the EU. Now, the EU has affected change in the political parties throughout Europe. And so there have been people, in my opinion, put in place, like the leader in France, whatever that guy's name is, Angela Merkel and so forth, that are kowtailing to the EU, and they are funded and pushed and promoted in such a way that you can basically say the EU has put them in place. This has everything to do with what we saw with Brexit. When Brexit happened, the British people said, we're not going to take this. We don't want this. We're tired of this. We didn't elect this bureaucracy, and we don't want to have anything to do with it. And, good for them. Because the thing is, in Germany, when it's time for the German unification each year, they have a holiday for that. And it amazes me that they are willing to allow the EU to dictate their lives and yet still celebrate the unification of their country, which obviously was a big milestone for them. But what good does it do to celebrate the unification of their country and the securing of their own borders when there are no more borders between Germany and any surrounding countries? And it's not that I want them to. It's not that I think that the European countries should separate themselves so that they, so that they are protected or something. I mean, there's not really an active war going on there, except from the influx, the raid that's happening of the migrants. But to strengthen the culture, Germany and France are two very different places, and you can tell. I mean, you can still tell when you talk to a German or you talk to a Frenchman. the way they act and their personalities are just very different, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it should absolutely be. They used to be empowered, especially the French. I mean, they were very, proud of their culture, and so they should be. But they don't have that anymore because now it's the European Union. Now it's Europe. It's no longer, and they're not even encouraged anymore to show their flag. It's considered a faux pas to wear your flag or whatever. And it blows my mind because when you're watching a soccer game, they're waving their flags and everything, but in public, they don't talk anymore about being proud of Germany. They especially the Germans say to themselves, well, we deserve this. We deserve to be overrun because of what happened in World War II, and it's completely ridiculous. So I'm glad that we have Donald Trump in this country. I'm going to bring it all back around now. You may have been wondering what kind of president he was going to be, but I think now we're finally starting to see what it means to have Donald Trump in office. He has made an unprecedented step forward, and I hope, and I'm sure that he will. I'm hoping that he will step softly, not softly, but take care in how he moves forward with North Korea. I saw the headline on Drudge Report. Trump does it again. He has convinced, Kim Jong-un has said that he is going to come to the table. Now, he is notorious for going back on his word, as we all know. China, I still believe that China 100% controls everything that happens there. I think that he is the, whatever you want to call it, he's the barking dog of China. And I think we were led to believe that wasn't the case when he was firing off those nukes and China was saying that they didn't support that. But I think there's all this behind-the-scenes stuff going on between China and North Korea. I think he's fully controlled. And China's very upset right now because this was supposed to be the generation of China, where they got all of the industry, where all of the American industry is finally moved over there and relocated, where they take the lead in global democracy, not democracy, but global government. And Trump is fighting back against that. And he's affecting change in worldwide politics as more and more other world leaders are coming around to understand that what was happening was an overrunning bureaucracy was trying to take over as a global government through the UN, through the EU, and so forth. And Trump's America First policy is not necessarily that we think we're better than everybody. It's that we fought very hard to have our sovereignty, and we don't want to lose it. And we're certainly not going to just roll over and turn it over to China or the UN or anyone else, as the European Union countries have done. They rolled over and handed over their sovereignty to an unelected democracy, to an unelected government. It's not a democracy. And it's a very sad thing to see that happen. Trump's not going to take it because he knows that the American people don't want it. And even though you do have a lot of millennials, a lot of liberals that maybe say that's what they want, I don't think they really understand what that means. You got people who have made so much money off the system, like Bernie Sanders and Nancy Pelosi up there telling us that that's what we should have, and we just need to roll over and hand in our guns and let's just turn our sovereignty over and not have and have fair trade and all this crap. But yet they made money off of this free society that we have, off the free market that exists here, this capitalist society that we have. They made all this money, and yet they don't want you to have the same opportunity. And so I believe that Trump is, like I said, his America First policy, but he also wanted to secure our relations for national security purposes, and that's exactly what's going on. That he's said he's going to sit down with Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un said he's going to come to the table. Let's see what happens. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I think he'll take caution. I'm very interested to see where the summit site ends up being. That's an article here on the Drudge Report from Yahoo. Search is on for the best summit site for Trump and Kim. I hope they don't decide to put it in China. I don't even know if I would want Trump going to South Korea for this. I think he needs to take care with that, and we'll see what happens. If he is able to denuclearize North Korea, that will be unprecedented. And his ratings are popping. I mean, they really are. He's, upwards of 50% now, and even a little bit higher. More and more people are coming around. They're understanding that Trump, he may say some things on Twitter that some people don't like or whatever, but it's because he's a real person. And he really does have the best interest of America at heart. That's why he's in office. And he's getting things done. I mean, he's going to go through his agenda because he does not have an active interest in being there longer than 8 years, longer than probably even 4 years. I mean, this is a guy that has put his business on pause to go lead the American people. And I believe that's what he's doing. So now that we know what Donald Trump looks like in the White House, I think we have a lot more in store over the next couple of years. He also wants to deal with Robert Mueller to have a speedy end to the Russian probe, which has gone way outside of the original scope. I think Mueller is a rogue agent at this point, trying to make a point. I don't really know what point he's trying to make. I guess he's just trying to cover up for the crimes that he committed with the Clinton brigade and so forth. Of course, everything that he has accused Trump of doing, he covered up the Clintons actually doing. And my question is, where is Jeff Sessions? Why has there not been? I did see something about Jeff Sessions having tried to open up an investigation into the Clintons, but why has that not gone through? Why is this Russian probe continuing? I mean, a year later, A.G. Sessions appointed prosecutor months ago to investigate Obama admin political spying. So there are some investigations, but we don't hear about that on the media. You don't have day in and day out talk about Mueller this, Mueller that with the Obama administration. But this nothing burger that still exists of Trump having colluded with Russia is the craziest thing. There was no collusion. And he's actually been, he's been completely cleared of this, but yet the investigation continues, using up taxpayer money. It's time to end that. President Donald Trump's lawyers are seeking to negotiate a deal with Robert Mueller that uses an interview with the president as leverage to spur a conclusion to the Russia investigation. I don't think he should do this, but you know what? He's a deal maker. I believe that he can get the job done. So let's to put an end to this garbage that's going on with this my tax money being used to investigate the president's collusion, which never happened. Whatever it takes to end that, I'm all for it. I think that Robert Mueller would try to trap Trump in something that he says, and then try to use perjury or something against him, but. Anyway, we'll follow that as it continues. So, you've been listening to the Sit and Spin radio show. I'm going to go ahead and end it here because I'm trying to keep these to about an hour. I will probably get back into a heavily more of a political conversation as we go forth. That is what the Sit and Spin is all about. It's about going through the week's news, sitting down, spinning around, and trying to understand what's been going on. But it's so nice to be back in the studio. It's so nice to have everything set up here that I really just kind of wanted to rap with you a little bit, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll come back again to hear more content at Spreaker Web Radio, SPREAKER.com. Search for the Sit and Spin Radio Show. You can also catch this on YouTube. Facebook has it as well. I'm Nick O'Kelly, and we're just so glad to be back that let's just say, well, I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. All right, we'll see you next time. Sit and Spin radio show, and look for To the Echo tomorrow night as well.